Welcome to the Fabulous Picture Show. I'm Amanda Palmer. This week at the Everyman Cinema Club, we're joined by director Alex Rivera as we screen his drama, Sleep Dealer, which is set in a not-so-brilliant future.
Every night on Drones, we take you live from the front lines.
It's Mexican sci-fi at its sci-finest. Also on the show, lasting peace in the Middle East.
So,
A new film shows that it's not so easy-peasy, lemon squeezy. And later,
du hører ikke til her. Det ved du også godt selv.
here's a Danish drama about cross-cultural struggles with a kick. But first, most directors think they're geniuses, but only a handful have ever actually received the $200,000 Genius Grant. And the first director to be certified a genius was American indie John Sayles.
You gotta get a rhythm. Everything in life got a rhythm, even pulling cotton off the plant.
John Sayles' latest offering, Honey Dripper, is a homage to the raw rhythm and blues that emerged in the 1950s from Black America.
That's the last time you shot him.
The owner of the Honey Dripper, an old-school pianist played by Danny Glover,
My head is spinning,
tries to save his club from going under,
and I was going down real slow.
whilst guitarist Sonny, played by newcomer Gary Clark Jr., hopes to make his mark in the quiet town.
Name like that sounds like a good place for a musician.
He brings his electrified sound, a sound that marks the largely unrecognised black origins of rock and roll. Gary Clark Jr. is a huge discovery for you, isn't he? I mean, I know that where he's from, they know him and he's been playing since he was 12 or something.
Yeah.
But he certainly is the wow factor in this film.
Well, I'm gonna hold my baby as tight as I can tonight.
We saw Gary play for the first time when he turned 21, and he was just a great player. And we read him for the part the next day, and there was this great joy in that, oh my God, he has some acting talent too. The hardest thing for Gary in the part was not the acting, which he did very, very well. It was being a show-off on stage.
Part of this film for you, I gather, it's almost a testimonial to the black pioneers of this music. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think it certainly existed before it was called rock and roll. And some of what I get into in Honey Dripper is there was a civil rights movement before it got called the civil rights movement, and there was rock and roll before it got called rock and roll. The music was especially fun. You know, I've always tried to be at all the music sessions for our movies.
Welcome to the table.
And I tend to work with the musicians like I work with an actor. I might say something like, well, there's an undertone of bitterness here, or this is very sad, or during the piece, he starts to be hopeful.
Oh, let the midnight special
Shine its ever-loving light on me.
It's so interesting meeting you because in 1980, when you made your first film, you were an indie filmmaker. And now this is one of the coolest things to be, isn't it?
What's interesting, it's a cool thing to be. It's an almost impossible thing to be an indie filmmaker and not be young. It's very hard to survive, to continue to make films, to continue to raise money or whatever. So, you know, now I feel like an endangered species more than, you know, the hottest thing on the block.
Sayles puts his social conscience on the screen, which is probably what won him that MacArthur Genius Grant. His slew of indie triumphs includes Meituan.
Let's welcome our new brothers.
Set amidst a vicious 1920s miners' strike. And 8 Men Out, about the 1919 Chicago White Sox, who threw the World Series.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
After being abused and exploited by the White Sox greedy owner.
I'm forever blowing ball games.
You've always said that you want to make films that you're proud of. I get the distinct impression here you're pretty proud of this one.
The nice thing about when you can pull it off, when you get to make an independent movie, when you have control over the casting and the final cut, you can really stand behind your work.
Now throw together one Palestinian widow, one Israeli defense minister, and a whole grove of lemons, and you've got a recipe for a new drama that's winning praise for its bite and zest.
Salma, a Palestinian widow, sees her life turned upside down when the Israeli defense minister moves in next door. The paranoid minister sees Salma's lemon grove as a threat to his security.
This grove seems so harmless, doesn't it? Yet from this very grove came the bullet intended to kill me.
And so begins a deceptively simple story.
مالك ام ناصر؟ ليش عم تبكي؟ تعرف كم من دولهم أرض صادروا عشان يبنوا لنا السجن؟
But Salma, played by Palestinian actress Hiam Abbass, refuses to stand down quietly.
Salma protecting her emotional heritage, and I think the whole conflict over there is about protecting our emotions, because finally what we struggle for is the very little decency that we're looking for to be able to live.
Salma's lemon grove is, of course, a metaphor for the Arab-Israeli conflict. Israeli director Eran Riklis feels an inevitable destiny.
I think, as a filmmaker coming from Israel, basically anything I do, anything I say will be political. You could say I'm doomed to doing these kind of films, but, what can I do? It's in me. It's really in me.
The film's pro-Palestine point of view has reaped the director some criticism back home, with so much allusion to the now infamous separation wall.
There's too much blood and too much politics, and there's a lemon grove between us.
Lemon Tree's part of the growing trend of collaboration between Israeli and Palestinian artists, trying to at least break down the cultural wall.
The more really the struggle gets stronger and stronger, and the more you try to get us apart, the more we try to get together to break whatever you're trying to build between us.
There are few internationally known Palestinian actors around, but Lemon Tree has two of the best. Abbass was joined by Paradise Now actor Ali Suliman.
Marhaba.
Alin. He plays young lawyer Ziad, who Salma recruits to her Lemon Grove battle.
شوفي مش هواي لمحامي من عنا يرافع قضية ضد الجيش.
Despite his Paradise success winning him work in Hollywood,
كمان ساعة راح نكون أبطال.
Suliman returned to make films in Palestine.
You return to build, to continue the road ahead. I made it there because of where I came from. As a man, as an actor, being in a situation like that, there is something you gain, which gives you the incentive to continue, to bring results.
شوين واحد يكون جار وزيرة منهم ها؟
فيش عندي رزق ثاني غير هالبيارة.
He was about to run for the presidency, and he was going to have to be from somewhere more than just the governor's mansion, I think.
In 1999, the sleepy suburb of Crawford, Texas was put on the map when then-Governor George W. Bush decided to make it his hometown.
The old rustic barn, the pictures of nature behind him. Maybe that's part of the game plan. I don't know.
Texan David Modigliani spent 6 years making this film and trying to capture the zany zeitgeist.
I became quite intrigued about what it would be like in this 700-person, one-stoplight town to have the then Governor Bush move in, win the presidency, and sort of take them on this roller coaster ride.
If you know anything about him, he was born in Connecticut, from one of the wealthiest families in the world. People tend to forget that whenever they show all the reports with bales of hay in the background.
At first, Crawford's 700 residents did what anyone would, given the chance. They cashed in.
People want something that say, Crawford, Texas, the Western White House. Christmas ornaments are big.
But the downside of being a wartime president's hometown soon kicked in.
There was in our community a fear that because of our new neighbor, that makes us a target too.
Protesters and tourists have swarmed here by the thousands since Bush brought his ranch.
If you're not for us, you're against us. Well, Mr. President, we're against you.
And as Modigliani shows, not all Crawfordians are in a rush for Bush to come back home.
It was a novelty.
And now a lot of the novelty is worn off.
In part two, we're screening Sleep Did. I had the filmmaker here. This is Alex Rivera. I love sci-fi.
I love science fiction too.
I can see why. It's so much fun to watch. But this is set in the not too distant future.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of science fictions are in the far future. Cars are flying. The world is different. This is set anywhere between 5 minutes and 5 years into the future. It's very connected to today's world.
Well, we're going to find out more about today's world in part two.